Hello, Magic Hour listeners. I'm really excited for you guys to hear all about the Beacon episode that's coming up. But first, I wanted to give you a little community update, and I hope to be doing this more in the future as well. So, first, I want to talk to you about this little game called Race to Uranus. That's right, that's the name, Race to Uranus. I was offered an opportunity to beta test this game. The devs have asked to remain anonymous, but I know them well, and they are connected with Battlefly and LifeDAO and have the support of the TreasureDAO team. Their code is open source, and you can see that's open source on the website, and you can also find it in the show notes. We'll link to that. And again, it's called Race to Uranus. That's not a joke. And it's a game of chance involving your smalls or your imbued souls or your battleflies. And also, you can win magic playing this game. So be sure to check it out. Again, the link's going to be in the show notes. So yeah, it launches today, by the way. I'm really excited. Next up, I'm going to use this space before our interviews to cover any treasure improvement proposals. There currently aren't any out there yet, but future ones will be announced here on the Magic Hour pod as well, so it'll keep you all in the loop on those items. And then finally, I wanted to tell you about this new initiative called the TreasureDAO Content SubDAO. This is something that we are working on, the Magic Hour pod, with the Treasure Times and the TreasureDAO team. We're going to basically collaborate our efforts, which we think will provide more resources to our builders in announcing their initiatives, their mints, their new features, as well as for the players who want to know what's going on with some of their favorite projects. We're going to be working on more social media engagement, more interviews, more content, and getting the word out there for the TreasureDAO. I'm really excited about this. I think you should be too. So keep an eye out, keep an ear out, and we'll see what comes of it. Thank you very much, and here's the Beacon. Coming at you all the way from Arbitrum, it's the Magic Hour podcast.
This is Alan.
Dionysus.
And Braiker. Produced by Digital Strategies Guild. Hello, friends of the Magic Hour. Today we've got a wonderful episode for you. I have the team from The Beacon here to tell us all about the project. We have Zelex, Faranku, and Davey. Did I get all that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's correct.
All right. Welcome. How's everybody doing?
Pretty good. Yeah, happy to be here. Excited to be here.
So usually we start these episodes with a little introduction to the team. Why don't you guys tell us a little bit about yourselves and how'd you discover crypto and Web3 and what excited you about it?
All right, sure. I guess I can begin if that's the case.
Sure.
Hey guys, Zelex here. My name is Diego. I'm the CEO of The Beacon. I'm a software developer, but I also have a background in psychology. As a secondary background, I've been a gamer all my life. I played different MMOs while growing up, and I'm still a gamer up to this day. I do play some Dota 2, but I for sure no longer have the time to play as much as I used to when I was younger. So I've been into the crypto space ever since 2016, late 2016, where me and Rafa Franco, we built an ETH miner back in the day. And we used that ETH miner to pretty much heat our home back into, let's call them the rough Chilean winters. But we also used the same ETH miner to brew some beer because the miner provided like the perfect environment for brewing beer, oddly enough.
Okay, that's really awesome.
Yeah.
One that you were a fellow brewer, because I used to brew beer too, and a gamer.
Oh, nice.
Really cool.
Oh yeah, so we share the same set of.
And I also built my first miner back in like 2013 or 2014, but I didn't know that I could use it to heat my home. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. I mean, it paid for itself at some point. That's funny.
Although it might not be the most efficient way to heat your home. Just putting it out
for
there.
sure.
I mean, money-wise, it depends on
Yeah,
how much
fair
you
enough.
get.
Touche.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if we kept those coins, maybe it would have. So the thing is, well, that's how my crypto journey in particular began. But I've heard about crypto earlier than that, but I never really jumped into it until it became a bit more popular by the end of 2016. And well, besides that, as a background, like my work background, I used to cut my teeth at Microsoft a few years back until at some point I landed the position of a product manager on Microsoft Chile. I was the product manager of Azure, which is Microsoft's cloud fundamentally. But I've always been the kind of guy who likes to build things, and I quickly realized that the corporate life was not for me. So back in the day, me and Rafa just pretty much decided to quit our jobs and create our own blockchain development company. This was back in 2019, though. And one thing led to another, and that's how we're here, let's call it. And that's a brief intro about me. Maybe you can jump into Rafa now if you want.
Yeah, well.
Yeah. So go for it.
No, go for it.
All right. Well, so my name is Rafael, but you can find me on Twitter as 0xfranco. So I'm the CTO at the Beacon. And I guess a little bit about myself. I've always been interested, in building stuff since I was little. So I decided to learn to code in high school just to build stuff for a living, I guess. But the stuff that I like to build the most is always has been games. I used to, spend most of my free time when I was younger just building games and trying it out with my cousins and friends, all that stuff. From the more professional side, I worked in technical leadership roles for more than a decade at this point, both as an employee as well as a co-founder. And I guess before I went back to entrepreneurship, which is now, I was working at Polymath, which was a security tokens chain. And I guess a year ago, I decided to go full nomadic, by the way, and just started traveling with my girlfriend and two cats. And finally, I've been doing what I like to do the most, which is building games with these two guys and a great team. So super excited about these times. And I guess that's it. That's me. Yeah.
That does sound very exciting. And I've heard of Polymath before. Let's talk after the pod, because you might know some people that I know.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
And then what about you, Davey?
Yeah, for sure. So my name's Davey. I run some of the operations around here. And I really began my career out in San Francisco about almost a decade ago. During college, I was building a startup. At the time, we were working on Einstein.com with a couple buddies of mine. And then at some point, the startup ended up crashing. So we took some of the code. One of my co-founders and I, we decided to go into cartography. And that was actually kind of where we first started with crypto. Coinbase, at the time was about promotion, $5 Bitcoin. This was in 2014 when it was about $250 a Bitcoin, I believe, something around there. And so we started payments in Bitcoin, and that was kind of always very exciting, exciting ground floor, especially for me there. And so afterwards, I went into cybersecurity. I was working at a startup called Synac in the Bay Area. They were a bug bounty firm. And essentially, I worked my way up to engineering manager, and we were managing a team of just, for building out web vulnerability detections. And after that, I decided to kind of just quit everything, quit my job, sold all my stuff, and just decided to go to South America with a pair of skis and just be a ski bum. That's actually where I met Diego and Rafa, who are on this call. I was actually ended up in their spare bedroom, which was kind of an Airbnb at the time. And I way overstayed my welcome. I think I was originally slated for just a month and ended up staying for half a year in their house just for that period. But we had a lot of yeah. And we had a lot of fun. We got into brewing some IPAs. So, if you're a brewer, you know what that's about. And obviously, working with the Ethereum miner at the time, trying to get the 21 degrees Celsius that's perfect for fermentation. And so afterwards, after my stint as a ski bum, got called back into tech. Essentially, I was working in a VC fund in the Bay Area. Remotely though, and essentially through there was exposed to a lot of deals, especially in crypto and crypto gaming. One of the most exciting ones was Forte, which was one of our investments in 2019 or so. And so Forte, they're a big kind of big into crypto gaming, but mostly on the Solana blockchain. And
Okay.
so over time, after some more kind of just engineering and investments, Rafa and Diego kind of called me up, telling me that they were working in building a blockchain studio, and now they want to kind of pivot into building a Web3 game. And absolutely, that was a short that didn't really need much convincing from their side, and here we are.
Awesome. I think that in a different dimension, if you guys subscribe to the multiverse theory, that we all would have been friends because I'm a ski bum too. So ski bum, brewers, gamers, Web3. I mean,
Are we
seems
not
like,
friends in this dimension?
no, we are, but like, I mean, I probably would like be hanging out with you guys in Chile also. It sounds like,
Oh, excellent.
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
I actually had like, it's funny. This is probably back in like 2011, 2012. I kind of wanted to go to Chile and live there for a couple months, but I ended up meeting my ex. But she was, my girlfriend at the time, and I ended up staying. I never went, but who knows what would happen? That's why I say in a different dimension. But
Yeah.
I digress. I digress.
Yeah.
Those pretty interesting stories. Now, obviously, we're all in crypto, but how did you guys discover the Magic ecosystem? I mean, there's plenty
So,
of different places that you could
so
develop the game.
sure. I mean, maybe later I can jump into what made us take the decision of joining Magic. But
Hmm.
the way that we found about it, it's like at some point when we were doing our fundraising, like our initial fundraising rounds, we were also looking for different, let's say, chains or different ecosystems to launch the game on, because it's still like a tough decision. Like there's many different blockchains pushing for the adoption of games, right? Like you have AVEX on one side or Polygon or different. There are different initiatives in that sense.
Hmm.
And one of the crypto VCs that we talked to pretty much told us like, hey, have you guys seen the Magic ecosystem? Have you seen the Treasure ecosystem? And because we believe that that would be like a great fit for you. And that's pretty much how we first heard about it. We were offered the option to look into it, and when we looked into it, we realized that that Magic pretty much had the community that we were looking for to build this game.
Awesome.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
what was it about? What was it about
we
the
could call it
community in general?
like a lucky. Yeah. So to jump into that, so one of the issues with finding a community, or let's say if we were to start from scratch, building on whatever other chain, even though these different chains are pushing for games to be developed all over them, each game on these different chains seems to be like its own silo, right? Like an isolated community that has a
Hmm.
very little interaction with the other games.
Right.
And when we saw Treasure, we realized that this was an ecosystem of people that were very fond of games and very fond of crypto,
Hmm.
and that were pushing the same sort of ethos that we were trying to push ourselves, right? This ethos of having interoperability between different projects. We really like the idea of, let's say, Treasure calling itself the Nintendo of crypto. And we quickly realized that the people there, like the community we found in Magic, was pretty much what what we were looking for. It's like that kind of profile of person that loves games, that loves the crypto as well, that believes in the future of this, and that is also luckily very fond of pixel art kind of style, right? Which our game actually really fits well into. So
Yeah.
it seemed to be like a very good fit from the beginning, and I don't think we have changed our minds at all with that. It's like we really like the community in Treasure.
Well, that means a lot to me, and
Mm.
I think that you nailed it because community is super important
Yeah,
in
it's the most important aspect.
right. And like you said, like the games that are siloed, unless they're super popular, they're just not gonna survive if people lose interest because
Exactly.
one of the
And here
things
you
that
have yeah, sure,
no,
sure.
no, no, go. It's
Yeah,
fine.
in here you have like people that actually share a vision across like multiple projects, and that's
Mm.
very hard to replicate.
That and I something that I've learned in crypto is that to be successful, you have to have that network effect.
Yeah,
If you're not generating transactions within your ecosystem, then there's going to be no value there because that's part of the value too. The value comes from the consistent transactions because that's what generates all the different fees, the yields that might get set up. All everything functions when there's a lot of activity. When there's no activity, you're just done. But
absolutely agree.
Yeah, that was something that we saw with Magic, just like the sheer level of engagement,
mhm.
and it was just super promising to see. Just really, really loved it from the get go.
Yeah, it's very like easy like to notice when people from Magic started joining the Discord, and they were just participating on a very different level compared to like I guess the outsider of the Magic ecosystem. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Which I mean doesn't preclude any of us from interacting with things outside the Magic ecosystem.
Of course.
But,
Like,
but it still is pretty exciting.
Yeah.
So let's go into the beacon, because I think that what I keep looking at is this, I guess, graphic on the Trove website. And if you're a listener out there and you haven't seen it yet, go to trove.treasure.lol. It's like right there on the homepage. And it's this guy who's like rolling and swinging a sword and navigating through all these enemies. Tell me about the beacon. I am dying to know. I want to know what it's about. I want to know how I can play it. Let's get into this.
Let's whet your appetite here.
Yeah.
So the Beacon, what we're trying to build here is a free-to-play fantasy action roguelite RPG.
Mm-hmm.
And beyond that, we're trying to do something special here by incorporating, MMO-like social aspects and NFTs into the gameplay.
Mm-hmm.
And to give a really high level, players will be able to just traverse through progressively harder dungeons. You can hone your reflexes slaying enemy monsters and just get to explore the world with friends, participate in the economy with your NFT loots. And so how the story goes is that you start off as a citizen of a city-state called Alteris. This is the city that's home to a giant monolith called the Beacon. And the Beacon, it's really there to kind of, with a protective shield, protecting the city from evil forces. But unfortunately, it's having issues, it's waning. And so you, the player, are getting sent off to faraway dangerous lands in order to just help secure some of the supplies necessary to maintain the Beacon and the well-being of Alteris, of course. And so how we envision this is that there are going to be 3 primary modes of gameplay. So we want the single-player PvE. This is going to be your roguelite gameplay where you go through the dungeons, you battle through monsters, you clear rooms, and just try to get as far as you can. If anyone who's played something like Enter the Gungeon, Hades, we're going to just try to take on like a similar approach to that. And throughout all this, dungeon crawling, you will be able to kind of like find NFT loots that progressively gets better the further you go. And those loots you can take home with you. Down the line, we do want to build out multiplayer and in particular, a co-op PvE style. And so much like I said before with the single player PvE, where you're going through, dungeon crawling, this one will be, where you will be able to kind of like form parties with your friends and dungeon crawl together as a team. And then finally, there's the homestead mode. And this is something that, we think is, this is something that we think can add a lot of extra kind of depth to the game. And in particular, what this is that, since you are playing in this faraway settlement, trying to help Alteris here, you will be, participating in kind of constructing the settlements, building out a new home, building out, helping build out like the settlement itself. And so a large part of this is, taking a lot of the NFT loot you find in dungeons, whether that is house items, whether that is character cosmetics, and be able to just kind of like create a home that's really yours. And so especially in the early kind of phases, which we'll mention later with the settlement launch, this will be a chance for players to really just show off like what they've got, and we want to really have this sort of like social component to it, and we think like that just adds a lot more depth and just is able to make the game a lot more fun.
So kind of like almost like a Animal Crossing ish piece to this larger
it has
roguelike
some
MMO, right?
Yeah,
similar.
There's also one thing more. That's the fact that one of the things that we sort of want to replicate is this feeling that MMOs kind of grant to players when you see other players like live running around, right? One of the things that we will want to have in the future is let's call this open world kind of town. Like if you played any World of Warcraft, it's like picture like Stormwind, right? Where you have like different places in the city that you need to go to in order to get your quests, to craft stuff, if that's ever in the scope. But the idea is to have this sort of semi-live world where you can see other players running around and show your stuff to them. Like one of the cool aspects of MMOs was that you could interact, and not only that you could interact, it was that you can showcase your stuff to other people and chat with them, and pretty much have like that live feeling.
That sounds exciting. I'm engaged already. How did I have how did the beacon get started? But I feel like we've covered that already, right?
Yeah, it was. I mean, it pretty much was what we mentioned before,
Mhm.
that we decided to quit our jobs, create our own
Right.
software development company. Then we found a client that pretty much
Mhm.
led us into the gamify space, and by working there, we realized that there was a chance in here to create like a good game, right?
Mhm.
And that's when we just pretty much set out to do that entirely. Like right now, all of us are working full time in this.
Okay. So what does it mean to be free to play? Like I can just log on to the website, jump right in and go through one of these dungeon crawls?
Yeah, that's exactly the idea. So I mean, if we think about free to play, traditionally it's just you can experience the gameplay without needing to make any upfront purchases. And same thing here. I think the future of this space as well, not just with our game, is that games should be able to allow players to experience the gameplay without needing to own NFTs out front and outright. And so, kind of what that means is that, yeah, like you said, you could jump in, go into the website, start playing checking out the dungeon, go visit, the settlement, walk around without needing to make any purchases. Obviously, making a purchase will unlock certain extra features. And having a wallet, having NFTs, especially down the line, we imagine that it will kind of give you a lot of additional kind of lateral, a lot of extra kind of gameplay depth. But those are completely optional. It's kind of on your own terms as a player.
Perfectly fine. I assume this is going to be web-based, right? Or am I going to have to download an
At
application?
first, yes. So for the settlement launch, it's gonna be in the browser, but we have plans of like taking this to desktop. I think this kind of games should exist, outside of the browser as well. Like just to
Mhm.
get the most out of your
Mhm.
machine and just to make the experience better, right?
Well, I always think about what Garp said on our podcast, and you can listen to that episode. And this is more for the listeners, but he said mobile is the future. Yeah, they want to get as many mobile games as possible. So, is there an opportunity for mobile in the future through like the MetaMask browser, or have you not considered that yet?
So I think there is.
Mhm.
I guess like it depends to what level we can expose the gameplay on mobile as well, right?
Mhm.
Because for example, in Dungeons itself, it's kind of like a dual stick kind of gameplay. So that's kind of hard to get right on mobile
True.
and be
True.
able to provide the same experience. But there's other parts of the game as well, right? Like the whole
Mhm.
social part, building your house, decorating your character, just
Yeah.
browsing. I think all of those could definitely live in mobile for sure.
Mhm. And they also have dual stick controllers now that attach to phones. I
Yeah,
personally don't have one, so I mean, there's a possibility. I
yeah,
just
that
think
is
about
true.
I've been playing this Marvel Snap lately. It's like addicting. It's like a 3 minute. Every game is like 3 minutes long. It's so great. So it's like in my head. All right, so you guys talk about this settlement launch, which is coming up at the end of this month. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct. The 25th
Is
of November.
is that you said the 25th of November? Is that the first piece of the game that will be available to users, or can I play the beacon now and I'm just like sleeping somewhere?
No, you cannot play it yet. But it's gonna be like the first
You will need
exposure
to
to the
come to Lisbon for the
Oh,
team's
okay.
thing.
Come
No,
to
no.
Lisbon.
I'll let Rafa explain this one. I mean, or at least that part.
No, I guess like actually, David, I think you should take this one. Yeah, we're
Mhm.
talking a lot
Sure.
about this, so yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So I mean, how we're envisioning the settlement launch is that this is going to be a way for us to really show the community what we are building. We
Mhm.
strongly believe in kind of just building out in the open and kind of just letting people like know what they're purchasing, if you will.
Mhm.
And so this is really that opportunity. And so how we're thinking about the settlement launch is that it's a way for members to be able to get a sneak peek of just a very early version of the game's homestead mode and single
Mhm.
player PvE mode. And so, as part of this, players will be able to try out the gameplay and in the
Okay.
process acquire NFTs. So, some of these NFTs they won't ever be available again, and so this is
Mhm.
kind of just a reward, especially for our early supporters. In terms of like the actual gameplay that you can expect, we're going to have a very scoped and limited version of the dungeon where we'll have essentially daily quests. You can
Mhm.
go into the dungeon. It'll look a little bit different every day, and in doing so, you can kind of, if you're able to complete it, you're able to receive a reward. And likewise, in the settlements, in the heart of the settlement, which is the tavern, there will also be kind of daily challenges during this period where you can kind of go in, interact with the NPCs, and if your interaction, if you answer say questions correctly or something like that, you can also be rewarded. And during this time, players can, essentially have their house that they can decorate with the rewards they've gained from these two places. And in doing so, essentially really, just showcase their stuff and compete with other players to really just have like the best, the dankest looking house. Yeah. It's like
we will also be handing away raffle tickets through these activities, and by the end of the settlement launch, players who have raffle tickets will have a chance of obtaining a whitelist spot.
Yeah, okay. And so this is all kind of like in a lead up, for example, to the whitelist minting that we will have down the line here. And so this is an early chance for people to not just like try things out, but also kind of just get in on the action. Hopefully before others can. After the settlement launch is over, we do envision that it will just run for 3 weeks. After that's over, any of the NFT earning events will be closed, but people will still have access to their house. They can still walk around, but we just, we're going to be heads down back into under development, building out really a lot more of the dungeon features, a lot more of the settlement town itself, and just building out more of the gameplay. In the interim between, after the settlement launch, players can still very much, change their house, decorate their house, and view other people's houses in a dashboard.
Okay, first off, that's awesome. That all sounds amazing. I'm like really excited. I definitely want to, like I said, I want to try this game. But you also you said a lot of stuff there, so forgive me if I just want to go back. So
sure.
Whitelist spots. Is it whitelist to play the settlement part, or is the settlement piece, the homestead piece, going to be open to anybody who wants to play?
Yeah, the homestead piece, the settlement launch is open to anyone. If you have a wallet, you can participate in it. You don't need to purchase anything, even though we do give the ability for people to become, founding members. Founding members is kind of just a way to, give you a little bit of extra for, as thank you for your support. And they'll come with, some extra NFTs and a chance to kind of get like these, some of these like really exclusive ones. And then throughout this process, as you kind of participate in the settlement launch events, you are getting raffle tickets sometimes, and that will convert to whitelist spots. It'll convert to, maybe like being higher up on the waiting list, and such that when we actually hit the mint date, which we have right now slated for December, that you will essentially be able to kind of get a chance to get it on the action and mint. So that will come after the settlement launch is over.
Okay. And so when we talk about minting, what are we minting? Because I haven't really seen much talk about an NFT related to you guys, although admittedly, I haven't dug too deep into your roadmap or anything like that. What is the NFT that's going to be minted?
Cool. Diego, you want to take this?
I mean, sure. What will be minted will be pets. That's basically what the whitelist spots are for. And pets are an accessory, let's say, perk to the game that will be offered. That will be composed of unique, of only 4,096 pets with different rarities. And you will be able to mint one of those, and these will have different impacts on the player's experience as the game progresses.
Your character is, I guess, given to you when you sign up, and I guess attached to your wallet. What type of character creation opportunities are we going to have in there as well?
So the character is an NFT. It is an NFT, but it's so it starts in game, but you will be able to withdraw it and basically use it as an NFT as well, right? With some limitations at first, but that's kind of going to be the case, and I guess soon we're going to share more details there. But your character is basically something you can dress him up with these different cosmetics. It gets generated with some information about himself, so like a name, and a couple of other little details there, I guess. But mainly is at the end of the day, it's just one little part of what gives you access to the whole gameplay. It's like if you have free to play, like owning a real character is what gives you the access to the full game experience in the long term.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, so I guess it's not too much fleshed out in terms of characters for what's in the future, but that's what they look like right now.
Yeah, no, but that's okay, because when you think about it, you're talking about this MMO roguelite. So, you're going to have a character who I'm assuming is going to level every time you do these dungeons. And so maybe if they die, they don't get as much experience before they reach the end of the dungeon. But, I'm sure eventually they're going to be like huge, characters who've got a lot of experience and are like higher level, and just like there are in many other MMOs. So sounds like pretty cool. How are you guys going to integrate magic into the game? Because I know that that's usually one of the important pieces to this whole ecosystem, is kind of
Yeah,
making
so
sure that everything is connected.
the way we plan to use magic is as the main unit of account
Hmm.
of the game, basically. So in that sense, whatever is it that the game will be selling or several purchases inside the game will be transacted on magic. And this will also apply for the secondary market
Hmm.
of the game, right? We are also applying to the TIP-09 emissions, where if we're granted those, we plan to give away some of these magic rewards to players, just to generate like a pleasant experience. And ideally, this will be tied to, let's say, challenging feats inside the game. But the idea of using these emissions would be to pretty much like to boost engagement, to give a good experience during the gameplay, and to help us grow the initial player base. We do know that Magic also plans to grow a lot, and we're not closed in any way to having like deeper integrations with the Magic ecosystem itself, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
But we're still fleshing out some aspects of the gameplay, so that's why we haven't really had that discussion, although we are somewhat open to it.
Hey, that's great. I think that that's a perfect use case for the magic token, and I want to see what that looks like. I'm sure it's gonna work out really well because that's always how I imagined it too, right? Regardless of the cartridge, as we call them in the magic ecosystem, if you're using magic within the game, like then you're being true to the actual token itself. Sometimes there are certain games where they have their own tokens, and you know it gets very convoluted. So
Yeah, it's usually
um,
painful.
yeah.
It's usually complicated. Yeah.
So moving on, I know that you guys have a lot of collaborations that you've announced with the Beacon. Tell me a little bit more about what those collaborations mean, because I think from what I saw, some of it's like a little cosmetic.
hmm
But how were you able to kind of form those collaborations? And does this mean that the projects that you're working with are on board with the Beacon and are kind
hmm
of supporting it as well?
Yeah, for the most part, right? So basically, these collaborations, we're still, of course, like working on this actively, right? In that sense, interoperability is huge for us, right? Like this capacity of using, call it an NFT, and in different places at the same time, like adding value to the NFT itself. The way that these collaborations work is where we basically pretty much partner with a project. Most of these projects are on Magic, but we're not exclusively limited to Magic. And just by partnering, basically, we grant this free to claim NFTs to the holders of the partnered collection. Right? So basically, if you own, let's say, a Toadstool, by game launch, you will be able to claim this Toadstool NFT inside our game. And usually, these NFTs inside our game take the form of cosmetics, in the form, in the most of the cases, in the form of house decoration items, right? This is also, we're also evaluating the opportunity for character cosmetics, but those do take a bit more time. And well, it's usually a cosmetic, a free to claim cosmetic for the partners that we pretty much work with. And we're actively working on this to have more collaborators as we go.
Yeah. But I think one thing I want to point out that's like really interesting about this is that, because this is Web3, and all of these items, all of these collections, they're universally accessible.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
we don't need any permission in order to kind of
Hmm.
like provide our support, additional utility for the holders of these items. So I think like tying into like the overall philosophy is that this is part of why we love Web3 is just that all of the stuff is like by nature interoperable, and even if the projects themselves don't necessarily give us the green light, we would still be able to do so.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Certainly. I think that you speak to something that I was just talking about earlier with someone else, is that like you said, the interoperability is so important and such a key feature that I think people really overlook how easy it really is to integrate. I come from the restaurant industry originally, like that was my traditional finance role. But when I was there, we would have pieces of software, and if you wanted to get them to talk to one another, you had to develop this piece of middleware so that they could talk to one another. And what I love about the blockchain is you don't need that anymore. It's literally
Yeah,
like
yeah.
one line of
Standardized.
code, right? It's like
Yeah.
so simple.
It
We
essentially
don't need.
solves standardization.
Yes.
Yeah,
That's the beauty of it.
hmm
yeah.
And you don't
I
even
mean,
need to think about it, right?
yeah. I mean, we don't need to ask any permission. Although, for the sake of, let's say, having good relationships, we have partnered, like, let's say,
Mhm.
more officially, but
Mhm.
we don't have any limits in that sense.
Yeah, yeah. Have you guys have you guys played Ether Orcs at all?
I
I'm aware of
haven't
the project. I
personally.
haven't. I haven't,
Okay.
but I'm aware of the project, but I haven't.
Yeah, I mean, they have a pretty interesting dungeon crawler, but they might be open to some sort of collaboration like that as well. They have a pretty big community.
I
But
actually did reach out to them. I
Mhm.
think early today. So
Yeah. But I mean, they're not magic related, but still very, very fun guys. And honestly, it takes me to like the next kind of area of this conversation I want to go to, which is the state of Web3 gaming and what Web3 gaming means. And I know that we play a lot of these, and I use the term play loosely. We play a lot of these games that are really just point and click adventures right now. And
yeah.
what do you think? And that's why I'm very excited about your project, because it seems like an actual game, which I'm very excited about, because I've been playing the Battlefly Racer, and Planet Crossword, which I'm a crossword puzzle geek. But
Oh, me too.
you know,
I've spent like an afternoon just playing that.
it's funny. I actually got my girlfriend to play one with me, but we were trying to set it up because she was in a different location, and she couldn't get it to open. So I started reaching out to the guys, and I was like, "Hey, can you help us out?" And we figured out, how to do it. But it was funny, come on, because I was like, "Hey, check this out. This is Web3. We could play a crossword puzzle together," and it didn't work. I was like, but what do you guys think? Well, I guess starting out, first off, what do you love and hate about the gaming space in Web3? I mean, clearly we love, the community aspect, but what else? Is there other things that you like about it?
Oh, where do we start?
Yeah. I mean, it's a very broad question. Yeah, go Dave if you want.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I can speak I can speak for why we think the gaming space in Web3 is just super cool. So I mean, like, first off, I think philosophically we see NFTs and just like blockchain gaming as really a resurgence, or it's very reminiscent of kind of what we saw with free to play that kind of originated, that really grew like over 10 years ago. And the how it really is that, like, you have this entire new mechanic to games. With a free to play is that you suddenly have this new monetization mechanics for developers, but also all these benefits for players, where the players didn't need to make upfront purchases. They knew what they were kind of getting into, and you were able to if you like the game more, you can like obviously spend more, but like it was kind of really on your own terms. And I think, like, in much the same way here, Web3 with applied to gaming, which maybe we should call it Game 3. With Game 3, kind of what we're seeing here is that, like, it's very much like the similar thing where you have all these new mechanics that are opening up. For the players, you suddenly are able to kind of just get all these sort of universal access to your item. It's not locked in the game. You could do whatever you like with it, and kind of what we talked about before, where it's like partner programs. They can, if they want to give utility to your item, they could. And so we see that there's a lot of potential for that network effect to grow, for just all these network effect in terms of value, right? For all the items that you own. And then for developers, we actually think that it's going to be inevitable that, like, pretty much like any major studio worth their salt is probably going to be building in this space. The revenue mechanics and stuff like that is just so much more improved. You're able to kind of have actually have like legitimate pre-sales that and people could be are interested in it, and even if maybe something doesn't work out, you still own the thing that, like, kind of was getting pre-sold. There's a lot of the whole idea with like royalties and stuff like that. For the creator, it was also I think it just makes so much sense that it's like free to play, at some point, it's just not going to make sense not to, take advantage of some of these mechanics. So I think like that's why I think the Web3, Game3 space is particularly exciting, just all around for everyone. Where it needs to improve, like the bad pieces here, I think, is the user experience. It's just too convoluted having to, essentially get a wallet, buy tokens, then use that to swap for, other tokens, having
Right.
to pay.
Bridge.
Yeah. And even if you think about it, like paying gas from a consumer perspective, most most developed countries and stuff like that, consumers don't pay transaction fees. It's always the sellers. So I think like having some way further down the line to kind of delegate the fees to another third party or to the I guess the vendor, if you will. I think like those are all going to be like important and necessary developments before the user experience is kind of on par with kind of what we have with just going to a store and buying a latte with a credit card.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right there, and I think that's definitely a big challenge. It's something that I talk with a lot of, I guess, my less interested in Web3 friends, where it's like, you talk about this idea or this game. Like I have this idea for this game of chance, right? And I'm trying to explain to someone, and they're like, yeah, but a normie's not gonna want to use Web3. They're not even gonna understand this. And we have to make it easier for them to where they don't need to understand it, right? They don't need to worry about what's under the hood.
Exactly.
I do envision that happening in the future, inevitably. Like, let's say back in the 70s, internet was really, really complicated to use, and nowadays nobody really knows the technology behind it, and they're just using it daily.
Right.
Yeah, I think like the complexities of Web3 should only be exposed along with like the extra benefits, so the user should be able to, like just opt into this stuff because it's very complicated. Like if you put it, like as a requirement to use your product or play your game, yeah, it's too much friction, I feel.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point in the sense that, like our philosophy for building is that we want to build a game that includes, optional, Web3 features as like a value add. But overall, it's a game. And I think like, a lot of the games maybe that are, Web3 games, I think put the focus too much on the Web3 side without, trying to get comparable UX for all the pieces that doesn't necessarily need to be, on blockchain.
And it's not just UX, right? Like also, like it feels like sometimes the focus is in the wrong place in Web3. Like sometimes they focus too much on the Web3 part, but they're trying to build a game, right? So we feel like it's kind of backwards, and that's one of the reasons that where we're trying to expose our community as early as possible into some gameplay, like so that we can set ourselves apart from the competition in some way, I guess, or the rest of the games out there that are doing the opposite, right? Like if we show gameplay from the start, then we're saying like, hey, we're not just here to just sell you some NFTs. We're building a game, and you can participate and be part of it. But we're building a real game. Here it is.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, you're absolutely right. I think it's it's a couple factors, right? You got game developers who are jumping into Web3 for the first time, so they may not really know what features they should be adding, and maybe they're not familiar with like being an independent developer like that. Or maybe it's a developer who's wanted to dabble in gaming, and so they know Web3, but they don't necessarily know how to build a game itself. And we're kind of like exploring that whole situation right now. But that's also the good thing about the Magic ecosystem because, and I'm just saying this from my point of view, if you're a developer looking to make a game or you're a game developer but you don't have the resources, the Magic community has a lot of those resources available to you through the Treasure DAO, which I think is huge.
And they also have the community that you need to kickstart the game, which is also one of the main challenges.
Right.
If
people
the game
who
is
can,
good,
evangelize, they can play test your game. Like they're gonna support you throughout the journey, and I think that's critical.
Yeah. So, we discussed the pros and cons of Web3 gaming right now, but what do you think it's going to take to reach a tipping point, or when do you know we've kind of reached that tipping point with play to earn gaming, or maybe we call it productive gaming. We talk about changing, the stigma
Yeah,
behind
changing
NFTs,
the
right?
name of it,
Right.
or blockchain gaming or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, there's different takes in this one, but what I think it's that it's going to be pretty much the products are going to bring the adoption. Like when real good games start to appear in this space, that's when and when people actually envision the benefits of, let's say, Game 3 or Web 3 versus the previous space. That's when the adoption will come, and that's also going to happen because developers are gonna decide to develop on Web3 instead of Web2 due to the benefits.
Mhm.
So it's partly products being shipped, it's partly good games being built, and to me that's also something that's inevitably going to happen. We just don't really see that. I mean, we do see some movement now, like if you compare like this year to the previous year, like you actually are starting to see like good projects beginning to build.
Mhm.
And I think that that's one of the main things
Right.
the main things that will drive the adoption. But that's going to come by the hand of developers.
Right. And I mean, I think today IMX launched the GameStop marketplace.
Mm-hmm.
But, like I think that this leads into my next question, which is, gamers don't like NFTs. And I fully am adamant that as soon as like a Fortnite or a Call of Duty brings their skin marketplace or their cosmetics marketplace to the Web3 world where you can buy and sell your skins on the open market, that
Yeah.
people are going to love this. Why do gamers why do they not want this? Why are they so against this? Do they feel that it's a scam? Do they not understand that they're going to be able to actually own their cosmetics that they don't actually own right now?
I feel like, yeah, I mean, I feel like, as a community, we haven't really been good stewards of like the Web3 or like, the blockchain brand. Just you can just see that with the prevalence of, scams, rug pulls, and also just like a bunch of like security flaws that are kind of discovered and exploited. And so I think like, it's partially, I think, on us as technologists not to have. I guess we're all kind of we don't get to choose our bedfellows, unfortunately, and that's kind of just the reality of the space here.
Mhm.
But I think with that said, though, I certainly. I think like I certainly agree with Diego in the sense that like a lot of adoption is going to be driven by just there being good intellectual property, good IP in the space. And I think like that's probably going to just take time. As over time, as more and more IP gets built, there's like going to be more and more substance in the ecosystem, and that's really going to, I think, like drive a lot of the usage there. I think to help facilitate that, we should obviously really just reconsider a lot of the premises for what it takes to use something in Web3, like the whole concept, I think, of wallets, and even kind of, for example, the security, having to manage your own security. I don't necessarily think that's like a good user experience for broad markets. I think like for people who are like very for people maybe who are more technical and stuff like that, this is we're more than happy to kind of rely on our own kind of gumption and stuff like that. But I think for the quote unquote normies, they would prefer to have better consumer protection over as opposed to like this ideology of just owning your own security, owning your own wallets, having full access to that. So I think like we should probably just re-examine what is actually going to be important here, and that's kind of why I was harking on good user experience before, because I think like just the whole wallet kind of process is not good user experience. But kind of like more to your point about just like the value of NFTs, right? Is that owning your NFT, like I think we need to just add more utility. I think the idea of like kind of being able to liquidate and access the market on your own without kind of without having to go through like a game, I think is super valuable. But like, is there anything more that we can do? A lot of people I think are pretty content right now with the fact that they purchase items and that's it. There's already a consumer expectation that like this is something that is totally digital, that like I just won't be able to like liquidate later. So maybe part of it is that we increase, we message that there's better and more value propositions than just the financial aspects of it. Maybe there's like greater utility provided by third parties, stuff like that. So I think it's a confluence of factors that we can all work on.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. I think to add to that, it's why do, let's say, normal gamers don't really like Web3? It's also the fact that they don't really understand, because nobody really dives that deep into something that has, let's say, a bad reputation that easily. They don't really. I don't think that they totally see yet the potential upside of the technology.
Right.
And that we're trying to push forward to make that more evident, right? But right now that's sort of invisible. The references that you have on the market, let's say the projects that exist right now, are not anywhere as good as the regular games on the, let's call it,
Right.
Web2 space.
Right.
These PFP projects that are, let's say, worth 300K don't really make sense to, let's say, to most normies. Maybe there's plenty of noise in here that needs to be removed before people can actually understand what's the benefit of the technology inside the game.
Yeah.
But to me, sure, go, Rafa, if you want.
No, so I was gonna say, like, from a gamer's perspective, like, if you, that who doesn't know Web3, like, when you hear NFTs, you hear mostly only bad stuff, right? Like, from the news, like there was like this rug pull or whatever, right? Or like this I know a big game, decided to do this move, but maybe they don't understand the ecosystem too well. They just know, like, NFTs, we want to do this, and they do something that's bad for the game, so they're not putting the game first, which for a gamer, who's very passionate, is a very bad thing, right? So why is this word, like this NFT thing, why is it ruining my games? That can also happen, right? Like, I know a lot of people, who are they are allergic to this word, and I think, like, part of it is, of course, not understanding what NFTs unlock in terms of capabilities. And yes, to David's point, I think, like, as the market matures and it gives better examples of really high value use cases for NFTs, it's gonna be easier to onboard people into this side of the space, I guess.
Right. So, like, a better user experience is just going to lead to more people coming in.
Sure, more information and also, let's say, more evidence of what the project, what the capacity of the technology is. Let's say if at some point you're able to grab a sword of your game and take it out of the game and I don't know, trade it for a game in Sword C without any necessarily interaction between those two projects, that's pretty huge. But you can still keep on growing that principle towards the fact that you can pretty much just export effort and value of a game towards an open market, and that's huge if you actually have let's say, the support for that in the ecosystem. And that's bound to happen. That's the way I see it. At some point, you will be able to trade, let's say, a sword in a game for a ticket entrance to Coachella. That's an NFT, for instance. Like, that's going to happen at some point, right? And that's huge. And I don't see the gamer community already taking. I mean, I don't see them seeing that. Let's call it. But they will eventually.
It's up to us
the technology
to make that happen, right?
Yeah.
So like, reduce the friction on ramps. That's a big one, right? And just provide, just try to unlock the real utility behind NFTs in games. The more we do that, the more convincing it's going to be for other people to come into the space.
I think this kind of, like, ties a little bit into what we see the Gabriel Layden from Digidiac. Pardon me if I'm butchering the name there, but you guys know who I'm talking about, right?
Digidiac, I think it is.
I know. Yeah. I mean, he's kind of. I mean, we completely agree with the sentiment of, like, just trying to rebrand, like NFTs, like Web3 and stuff like that. I mean, that was kind of why, like, earlier, kind of just as a joke, obviously, mention, like, Game 3, but it's one of those things where it's like, I think, sometimes we should probably, to play smart, we should probably just get ahead of ourselves and, like, use the terminology, use some, non-poisoned terminology in terms of communicating to our audiences here. I'm not saying I advocate for digis. I think it's it feels a little bit too nebulous and too broad as to, like, what the actual value proposition is. Because I think, like, right now is that, like, we need some sort of, like, terminology that really simply communicates value proposition. Digital collectibles, I think, is kind of a little bit way too broad. Like, it could be like an NFT, like, profile picture, or it could be some other, like, in-game sword.
It's also a mouthful too, right? Digital collectibles, just I think someone's gonna come up with it, or it's just gonna, or the zeitgeist is just gonna come up with some sort of name, and it's just gonna stick.
I mean, to that point, I do think that I mean, this is just my personal opinion. We should establish a distinction between, let's say, items in games in blockchain versus, let's say, collections of PFPs and stuff like that. Because even though they all fall under the umbrella of, let's call them digital collectibles, they're not necessarily the same thing. And I think that mixing those together is not really helpful for what we're trying to build right now as let's say, as a gaming blockchain.
Yeah.
I just want there to be like, free to play was such a great, terminology, like something akin to that just like anybody who hears it is like, oh, that's what I should do with, this thing that I own.
Yeah. I mean, I'm curious to see what people come up with, but I can't think of anything that sounds even remotely cool. The only thing I thought of just now was Gas It, and that just doesn't sound really good at all.
Wait, what was that? Gas It?
Gas It. It's like a game asset. I don't know.
Oh no, I thought it had to do with gas or something. So
that's my point.
Well, I guess Davy's game 3 is kind of interesting.
Yeah, game 3, maybe.
I think it's doing a little bit too much heavy lifting, like borrowing from game 3. It's not good. It's not good.
That too, and it's just too broad. Still, like you don't know what it means.
Exactly. Like maybe universally accessible loot, UAL.
Something like that.
Yeah, it's probably going to be an acronym of something at some point.
Yeah.
Sadly, yes.
But guys, this was a great hour. I feel like it flew by. I want to say that I'm really excited about the beacon. I'm looking forward to checking out the settlements on the 25th. I think I'm gonna try and stream it too, because I kind of want to do some more streaming of Web3 gaming as the Magic Hour pod. So maybe this will be the first game I stream. It looks fun enough for sure. And I think that's another way we should get people into this space is they're all over Twitch and awesome. YouTube and stuff like that. So let's try to make that happen too. But for now, thanks very much for coming on the pod. It was a pleasure talking with you guys. And good luck to you
as well. Yeah.
It was a pleasure. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, nice to see you here. And for the people who are listening to this, remember the 25th. Be ready. We're gonna be waiting for you.
Yeah.
Remember the 25th of November, right?
There you go.
And that concludes another episode of Magic Hour, friends. If you like what you hear, please like and subscribe to our YouTube or Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever you can listen to your podcasts. You can also follow us on Twitter at Magic Hour Pod. All the links are found on our link tree, which is in the show notes. From all of us, we appreciate your support for Bridge World.